apparently there's a recording widely available out there. However, I'm not going to address the points I already brought up. I have fresh and more complex items I wanted to share. Marlon, thank you for clarifying these materials and refreshing my memory that we actually requested the Washington letter. Because I was on the East Coast and in Massachusetts, I looked at theirs too, and it's fascinating. There is a common thread amongst all of these letters, and we can all guess why. Except the Washington State is even more stunning to me in what it says about its own community. Shockingly stunning. Washington State is not a place of exceptional excellence like Alaska is. Apparently, either in its history and certainly not in what their own court describes as the state's values as portrayed in their letter. Literally, I had no idea, according to them, this is their state Supreme Court, that Washington State is such a terrible place, and I'm glad I don't live there. I have 3 sons, and I've taught these sons about Alaska's exceptional excellence and want to share it with everyone here because I have had a lot of time to think about this. And so essentially, I'm going to go through a couple of reasons of why both, Washington State Supreme Court statement, the Massachusetts one I read, and all of these don't apply to us, and why the Alaska statement is in error, if not at least ill-advised. And so as I go through each of these, I would appreciate if each of us would reflect on why wouldn't our Supreme Court include what I'm about to share as some sort of a comfort during such a time of acrimonious conduct by so many across our great nation. So the first one is Alaska completed a total of 4 reparations cycles, including the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, which coincidentally was signed this month 49 years ago. Let that sink in. We've had 4 cycles. We've had ANSCA, 2 recapitalizations of Alaska Native corporations, and more recently for those in military service that were previously unable to apply. As far as I know, no other state has engaged in such a complete or even broached reparations process. 2, Alaska is a place where minorities own the largest Alaska-based corporations. 3, Alaska is a place where each citizen receives an annual basic income check as a participation in its resource extraction. As far as I know, other states don't do this. South Dakota has made a heck of a good run at an investment bank structure, but all that money gets plowed back into government. 4, and most personally to me of all, I can say that my 13 years of service on this commission, which saw incredible numbers of accusations of ethical impropriety or mental disability against judges in the Alaska core or well as the periphery or outlying areas, just a fraction were ever deemed even jurisdictional. And a fraction of that fraction ever moved forward to actual charges. Again, in 13 years, we have thoroughly reviewed each and every accusation, jurisdictional or not, with a special sensitivity for parents and bias issues. And it's because why I serve. I'm a finance guy. What the heck am I doing here? Well, there's an interconnectedness between the judiciary and cleanly operating financial markets. And the confidence in those courts is the bedrock foundation of our nation and state, and what makes our country exceptional. Number 5, I want to talk a little bit about Washington State since we asked to look at it. So according to census.gov, Washington State has about 80% white population, while Alaska is far lower at 65%. With ANSCA, 49 years ago or half a century ago, Alaskans apparently figured out how to live with one another, while according to the Washington Supreme Court, their population still suffers deep xenophobia. From my experience, I grew up in a village of 400 people. We all played ball. We all went to school. We married each other. We loved each other. I'm at a loss. Item number 6. It's clear the Washington Supreme Court itself is myopic in that its letter's historical focus chose to single out a minority that is only 20% of their entire minority community for commentary. What happened for courts seeking justice for all? I know ours does. I've got 13 years where I can tell you that straight looking into the camera. I wonder what it is that in this Washington State Supreme's mind when they chose to only do this highlight. I also wonder why so many of these letters look so much alike. Yet here in Alaska, our Supremes chose to ignore what I've just shared. But I want to say one more thing, and this I did touch on in the last meeting. So item 7, I warned last meeting that the Alaska Supreme Court may have exposed itself to nullification with their ill-advised letter. And here we are just one meeting later, and in fact, their letter is part of a complaint to this commission. What an unnecessary exposure that they have already caused, that we have to worry about that in process. And so it's been implied that our court was simply showing allegiance with other states. So in kindergarten, in Talkeetna, Alaska, with Mrs. Stevens, I learned that if someone else jumped off a cliff into the river, I didn't have to. And considering that Alaska has gone through reparations, its largest companies are minority owned, we have basic income. And by the way, people in our periphery have even more basic income than from the state level. Some of them get it on the regional and local level, which is fantastic participation. But anyways, we have basic income and an exceptional judiciary. It seems like our Supreme Court's actually jumped off a cliff. That or they live in communities that are horrible, that somehow inspired them to write this, or may have bias or other ethical peer challenges that I really do believe we as a commission should investigate. Their picture that they drew in that letter of Alaska is not the Alaska that I know. My family has only been here 100 years, but we've been on the continent 400. And the picture that was drawn does not represent the Alaska I know, both in my professional duties, in my civic duties, serving on this commission. And so I would like us all to contemplate these things. Why weren't these things? Were they literally peer pressured into writing a letter because everyone else jumped off the cliff? I mean, really? This is what our Supreme Court is? I respect our Supreme Court. They make good decisions. Heck, they've even sided with a minority opinion of mine here through judicial conduct, but that was actually a different court. We have people now that have potentially nullified themselves. I brought up the APD beat down, and this was the APD officers getting beat down. I brought that up at the last meeting. If that makes it to the court, they can't hear it. They're going to have to reject it. I now have a little bit to say about the fairness and access meetings items on pages 40 through 42 of our packet. I do not appreciate, I watched when AFN passed this resolution in 2018, and I am troubled that it just now is being addressed suddenly in November 18th of 2020. This seems more of a reaction than a genuine response. Again, people goal seeking perhaps. I'm also concerned that we have no commissioners from judicial conduct brought into this, or if someone has, it's without notice that I'm recalling, and I could stand corrected. But as some of you know, I taught statistics at the university level. So I want to know why anyone is using state resources, embarking on a statistical analysis of secondary, and then an interpolation of that data. Why not examine the Alaska Commission on Judicial Conduct files for empirical frequency and velocity of these exact issues over the past decades. I know that we can do that carefully and without betraying any judge's confidential information, that we hold that in. Why are we not doing that?